The ink in General Miriam Okonkwo's pen was warm against her fingers. She had been holding it for hours without realizing. The cheap stylus was 11 years old, the one her daughter had given her before leaving for Mars Colony 7. Her daughter had been 19 then. Dark hair. A smile that made everyone around her relax. Now she was 30, living on a colony that might not exist in 3 days. Okonkwo clicked the pen twice. The Galactic Council's amphitheater seated 1,847 delegates in concentric rings that rose 40 meters above the human delegation. The air smelled like recycled stone dust and old victory. The human table was a lowered platform, recessed 1.2 meters below the main floor. Every human had to crane their neck upward to see the High Arbiter. Pale stone columns, carved with the 847-year history of council victories, swallowed all sound except the echoes of accusation. High Arbiter Xylian of the Vorth unrolled the declaration. 7 feet tall, bioluminescent mandibles that pulsed a slow green, his resting color. When he got angry, they would flash yellow-green. Okonkwo had watched recordings of 847 council sessions. She had seen that flash 312 times. His ceremonial war cloak was woven from the teeth of 12 conquered species. Each tooth had been pulled from a living commander. The Vorth believed pain made the trophy sweeter. Humanity, Xylian said. His voice filled the amphitheater. No microphone needed. The chamber had been designed to carry his species' natural frequency. Your species has violated 9 provisions of the Galactic Concord. Your expansion into Sector 7 infringes on Krell ancestral claims. Your diplomatic delays have wasted 847 council hours. The amphitheater erupted. 1,203 delegate species cheered. Clicking, roaring, chittering, screaming. The sound of anticipated extinction. A Vreen delegate beat its chest with all 4 arms. A Pelorian released a cloud of orange spores, their species' sign of approval. A Thalen raised a ceremonial blade and slammed it into its own table. Xylian raised one 6-fingered hand. The noise stopped instantly. That was the other thing about the amphitheater. The acoustics could be turned on and off by a single gesture from the High Arbiter's podium. Effective immediately, the Council declares war of eradication. You have 3 standard cycles to surrender your colonies. General Okonkwo finished pouring tea from a small thermos. Stainless steel, dented, brought from Earth 37 years ago. The tea was jasmine green, the same kind her husband had drunk every morning before he died. She clicked her pen once more. Then she smiled. Not a defiant smile. Not a nervous one. Not the smile of someone who had given up. The smile of a woman who had just heard the correct answer to a question she'd been waiting 37 years to ask. She stood, tucked the thermos into her jacket pocket, walked toward the exit. 1,847 alien delegates watched her go. 17 seconds of silence before the whispering began. No warning, no declaration, no mercy. Just a woman walking out of the room where they had just sentenced her species to die. She didn't look back. Her pen was still warm. You'll want to know what she'd been waiting 37 years to hear. Stay with me. The smile makes sense soon. 87 years before the Council's declaration. A different room. 87 years before Okonkwo smiled. The Fleet Command Bunker sat 847 meters beneath Johannesburg. Circular. Soundproofed. The walls were bare gray concrete except for one thing. On the back wall, painted in faded gold letters that had been touched up every year for 4 decades, Operation Long Patience. A countdown timer on the main screen read 0003-12-47. 3 days, 12 hours, 47 minutes until the Council's deadline. 6 people were already seated around a circular table when Okonkwo walked in. The table was dented metal, scarred from decades of coffee mugs and clenched fists, and elbows propped in exhaustion. Dr. Aris Thorne had coffee-stained fingers and a gray beard that hadn't been trimmed in weeks. 19 years on the project. He was 58 years old and looked 70. His tablet was cracked in the upper right corner. He had dropped it during a simulation 3 years ago and never replaced it. He didn't look up when Okonkwo entered. Commander Elena Voss sat to Thorne's left. Prosthetic left arm, matte black carbon fiber with a silver elbow joint that hissed when she bent it. She was a chess grandmaster, never raised her voice. She was studying a star chart with her good hand, tracing a route from Earth to Sector 9 with one finger. Admiral James Chen was 62 years old, former history professor at the University of Cape Town. He had memorized every council treaty, all 847 of them, and could recite any clause from memory. His glasses were pushed up into his gray hair, a habit from his teaching days. He didn't need them anymore, he'd had surgery, but he kept them anyway. For comfort, Captain Idris Diallo sat with his back straight, military posture even when no one was watching. He carried a photograph of his grandmother. She survived the Lagos famine of 2031. He touched the frame once before every briefing, just a thumb on the glass. Then he was ready. LT Myra Singh was knitting, dark green scarf. It was already 6 feet long. She had been knitting it for 11 years, one row for every day she had worked on Operation Long Patience. Her needles clicked in the quiet. "My grandmother taught me in 2037, she said without looking up. Said knitting helped her think during the bombing raids, kept her hands busy so her brain could work. She looped a new row. I've knitted through every war since. World War III, the Mars Rebellion, the First Contact War, and now this one." Ambassador Sophia Reyes drank coffee from a chipped mug. The mug read, "World's OK Mom," in faded brown letters. The C had been chipped off years ago, so it actually said, "World's OK Mom." The apostrophe had survived somehow. Black coffee, no sugar, room temperature. She had been drinking the same cup for 3 hours. Okonkwo stopped at the head of the table, clicked her pen twice. The sound cut through the room like a starting pistol. "What's the status of the Shepherd array?" Chen tapped his tablet. His glasses slipped down his nose. He didn't push them back up. "The Council has mobilized 12,847 ships. They believe we have 94 combat vessels." He paused, looked at Okonkwo over the top of his glasses. "They are wrong by a factor of 847 to 1. Singh kept knitting. The scarf was getting longer. She was on row 4012 now. She had counted that morning. Thorne pulled up a hologram. A starfield rotated slowly in the center of the room. Stars, asteroids, the dark between. The Shepherd array is 4,712 drones, hidden in the asteroid field of Sector 9's 14th moon. He zoomed in. The image expanded until a single asteroid filled the hologram. Then another zoom. A crevice. A cave. And inside the cave, a drone the size of a school bus, wrapped in radar-absorbent fabric that had been invented specifically for this project. "We've been deploying them for 37 years, 2 months, 11 days. His coffee-stained finger pointed at a data readout. 1 drone every 2.8 days, not once detected. The timer ticked. 0003-1201. They came, they struck, they vanished. For 37 years no one noticed." Okonkwo poured more tea from her thermos. The steam curled up toward the concrete ceiling. "How long until they declare?" Chen's jaw tightened. 72 hours, Xylian will make a speech. The delegates will cheer. Then he'll give us 3 cycles to surrender. "And when we don't," Reyes answered. She set down her chipped mug. "Then they jump toward Saul with 12,847 ships. They expect us to panic." She looked at the timer. "They're going to be disappointed." Singh's needles clicked twice. Ambassador Reyes opened a private channel. On the screen, an arachnid-like face appeared. 4 eyes. Sequential blinking left to right, always the same pattern. 8 legs folded beneath a body covered in silver fur that had once been black. Elder Nymery of the Tev, 1,847 years old. Her species had been council members for 7 centuries. They had never been given a voting seat. The council said it was because the Tev were slow decision makers. Nymery knew the truth. The Tev were too old, too wise, too likely to ask questions that the ruling species didn't want answered. "You knew," Nymery whispered. Her mandibles trembled. The fur on her legs bristled. "You've been preparing for 37 years. Reyes poured more coffee into her chipped mug. The liquid was black and steaming. She didn't add anything. We've been watching for 87, preparing for 37, waiting for them to declare so we wouldn't have to. Nymari's 4 eyes blinked one after another, left to right, left to right. I read your history last night. All 847 pages of your World War II document. She paused. Her mandibles opened slightly, then closed. Your species. You smile before you destroy things. It's not cruelty, it's peace before the storm. Ray set down her mug. The chipped ceramic made a soft sound against the dented metal table. That's not how we'd phrase it. She looked at Okonkwo. But you're not wrong. Nymari brought 12 species into the channel. The Tev appeared first. Nymari's image split into 12 smaller windows. Then the others joined. The Krell, their territory had been annexed 311 years ago. They had been refugees ever since, living on converted cargo ships because the Council wouldn't give them land. The Sith, reduced from 47 colonies to 3, their homeworld had been strip-mined for minerals that the Council needed for warships. The Sith had been promised compensation. That was 200 years ago. They were still waiting. The HFY scientists, their research had been banned after they published a paper proving that 3 Council species shared a common ancestor. The Council called it unauthorized discovery. The HFY called it truth. The Ili, artists. The Council considered them useless. The Ili had no army, no resources, no strategic value. They had only their songs and their sculptures and their 40,000-year tradition of painting the history of the galaxy on cave walls that no one visited anymore. The Marin, water breathers. Their seats had been removed from the Council Hall 150 years ago because the Council said it was too expensive to maintain the water tanks. The Marin had been voting by proxy ever since, but their proxy had never once cast a vote in their favor. The Tikari, 9 survivors of a cleansing 211 years ago. The Council had called it a population adjustment. The Tikari called it what it was, genocide. They had been 9 years old when it happened. Now they were 220 years old and still the only ones left. The Vel, memory keepers. Their histories had been deleted from the Council archive during the Great Purge of 1892. Every record of their species' 50,000-year civilization gone. The Vel had been retelling their history from memory ever since. But memory fades. The Orani, no weapons. They had disarmed themselves 800 years ago as a religious gesture. The Council mocked them as the harmless. The Orani had not forgotten. They had just been waiting. The Sendari, children of a dead species. Their ancestors had been custodians for a race that went extinct 3,000 years ago. The Sendari had been maintaining the empty buildings ever since, cleaning the dust from desks that no one sat at, watering plants that no one saw. The Pru never invited. They had sat outside the Council chamber for 500 years, not protesting, just waiting, sending messages that no one answered. And the Xyle, the last of their kind. 847 individuals left. Their species had been dying for 1,200 years, a slow genetic collapse that the Council had refused to research because the Xyle had no political power. The Xyle had been watching their children be born with missing limbs and failing organs, watching their population shrink from 8 million to 847. They were tired. "We don't need your ships," Commander Voss said. Her prosthetic arm hissed as she leaned forward. "We need your silence. Confirm you saw nothing for the next 72 hours. One by one they agreed. No speeches, no grand alliances, just quiet nods. The Krell nodded, the Sith nodded, the HFY nodded, the Ili nodded. The Marin nodded, their image rippled underwater. The Tikari nodded, the Vel nodded. The Orani nodded, the Sendari nodded, the Pru nodded, the Xyle nodded. Nymari's mandibles twitched. "What are you planning?" Ray smiled. She lifted her chipped mug in a small toast. "Have you ever heard of farming?" The timer read 00000000. Okonkwo's pen was warm again. She hadn't noticed when she started holding it. Her fingers had been wrapped around it for the last hour without her permission. Xylian broadcast to the galaxy. "Humanity has refused to surrender. Execute war plan." His mandibles were yellow-green now, not resting, angry. The Council's 12,847 ships jumped toward Sol. 12,847 drive signatures flared on the bunker's main screen, then vanished. The jump took less than a second. "They're gone," Chen said. His voice was steady, his hands were not. He was holding his tablet so hard that his knuckles were white. "ETA to Earth, 11 minutes. Thorne pulled up a different display. The Shepherd Array. 4,712 green dots on a star chart of Council space. The Shepherd Array is online. All 4,712 drones, waiting for your order." Okonkwo didn't answer. She walked to the bunker's small coffee station. The station was in the corner, a cheap electric kettle, a box of tea bags, a jar of instant coffee that had expired in 2054. No one had thrown it out. No one used it. It was just there, a monument to bad decisions. She poured tea from her thermos instead. The steam rose in the cold air. The bunker was always cold. 847 meters of rock above your head meant the temperature stayed at a steady 14 degrees Celsius, no matter what season it was on the surface. She held the cup in both hands, let the warmth sink into her palms. "You declared war on patience," she said quietly. She wasn't talking to anyone, or maybe she was talking to everyone. "We declared war on your ability to wage war." She turned to Chen. "How long have we been mapping their logistics?" 37 years, 2 months, 11 days. Chen's voice was steady now. His hands had stopped shaking. Every transmission, every trade route, every refueling station, every dependency. "Show me." A new hologram appeared. Council space, a web of supply lines, fuel depots, and FTL relays. Thousands of points of light connected by thin blue lines. It looked like a nervous system, a brain. "We don't need to destroy their ships," Chen said. He pointed to a cluster of red nodes near the center of the hologram. "We need to destroy their logistics." He zoomed in. The red nodes resolved into individual stations, each one labeled with coordinates and fuel capacity and crew complement. 847 fuel depots, 2,311 supply stations, every single FTL relay in Council territory. The timer showed 9 minutes until the Council fleet arrived at Earth. Okonkwo clicked her pen. "No warning," she said. "No declaration, no mercy." She turned to face the room, looked at each of them one by one. Thorne with his coffee-stained fingers, Voss with her prosthetic arm, Chen with his glasses pushed up into his gray hair, Diallo with his grandmother's photograph, Singh with her knitting, Reyes with her chipped mug. They declared war on patience. The pen clicked a third time. "We've been practicing for 37 years. The Council's 12,847 ships arrived at Sol. The jump was perfect, precise, exactly where the navigation computers had aimed. But there was nothing there. Earth's defense systems were offline. The orbital platforms were dark. The 94 visible human ships were decoys, inflatables with heat signatures and radar reflectors, and nothing inside. No weapons, no crew, no engines." On the bridge of the flagship, a Vorth officer stared at his screen. His mandibles were yellow-green. His 6-fingered hands were shaking. "Where are they?" No one answered. The tactical officer, a younger Vorth with duller mandibles, ran the scans again, then a fourth time. "Nothing," he whispered. "There's nothing here." Admiral James Chen broadcast on all frequencies. His voice was calm. He had practiced this speech in his head for 847 nights. He had dreamed about it, woken up in a cold sweat, gone back to sleep and dreamed it again. "We have spent 37 years mapping every Council transmission, every trade route, every refueling station, every dependency." He pressed a button. "We don't need to destroy your ships." Across Council space, 4,712 drones detonated simultaneously. Not ships, not colonies. 847 fuel depots, 2,311 supply stations, every single FTL relay in Council territory. The lights on the hologram went out, one by one by one. Chen kept talking. "You declared war on patience. We declared war on your ability to wage war." He paused, took a breath. "Your ships have fuel for 11 days. Your colonies can't communicate beyond their own systems. You haven't lost a battle. Another pause. You've lost the ability to fight one. Silence. On the flagship, the fourth officer stared at his dark FTL display. No relays, no supply stations, no way home, no way to call for help, no way to warn the colonies. He was 847 light-years from the nearest friendly port. His fuel would last 264 hours. His food would last 180. His mandibles went gray. High Arbiter Xylian's mandibles pulsed yellow-green once, then went dark. He had no response, no speech prepared for this, no contingency plan, no emergency protocol. No one had ever responded to this before. On the bunker's main screen, Council ships drifted. No explosions, no casualties, just stranded vessels and dark relays and the slow realization spreading through 12,847 command decks that they had already lost. Okonkwo's voice came through the channel. "Calm T-Warm. Send the Shepherd." The words hung in the air. Send the Shepherd. On the flagship bridge, the fourth officer didn't understand. Shepherd? What Shepherd? There were no ships, no weapons. Nothing but dark relays and stranded vessels and the slow horror of being 847 light-years from home with 11 days of fuel. He checked the display again, then a fourth time. The numbers didn't change. 847 fuel depots gone. 2,311 supply stations gone. Every single FTL relay in Council territory gone. He looked at the dark FTL display. No relays. No supply stations, no way home, no way to call for help, no way to warn the colonies. His mandibles went gray. Xylian's mandibles were still dark. He hadn't spoken in 90 seconds. His six-fingered hands were flat on his podium. His compound eyes reflected his own face back at him. A face that had never been interrupted, never been ignored, never been made to wait. Now he was waiting. The bunker was quiet. Chen's hand was still on the button. Singh's knitting needles had stopped clicking. Ray's was holding her chipped mug in both hands. The coffee had gone cold. She didn't seem to notice. Okonkwo walked toward a door in the back of the bunker. No one followed. They knew where she was going. The door led to a small room, 8 feet by 10 feet. Fluorescent lights that flickered once every 17 seconds. A bad ballast that no one had ever bothered to fix. The floor was concrete. The walls were concrete. The air smelled like dust and old paper and the faint sweetness of tea that had been spilled years ago and never fully cleaned. On the walls, 847 photographs. Each face was someone who had worked on Operation Long Patience. Someone who had died before seeing it finish. Not in combat. There had been no combat. They died in accidents, of disease, of old age, a heart attack at a desk, a car crash on the way home from a briefing, a cancer diagnosis that came 6 months too early, a stroke in the shower, a fall downstairs, a blood clot after a long flight back from Sector 9. One by one they had left, and one by one their photographs had gone up on this wall. No fanfare, no ceremony, just a small room and a flickering light and a woman who promised to remember. Okonkwo stood in the center of the room. The flickering light caught the first row of faces. Young, old, smiling, serious. Some in uniform, some in civilian clothes. One woman was wearing a party hat. She had died the day after her 40th birthday. She pulled a small notebook from her jacket pocket. The pages were soft, worn from years of opening and closing. The cover had a coffee stain on it from 2019. She had spilled a cup on her desk and the notebook had been sitting there. She never replaced it. The notebook had 847 pages, one for each person on the wall. She opened to the first page. Technician Marcus Webb, she read. Deployed drone number 1847, died of cardiac arrest, age 61. Her voice was steady. She had practiced this. Not aloud, she never read the names aloud except when she was alone. But she had read them in her head, thousands of times, so that when the day came, she wouldn't stumble. His daughter said he was fixing a toaster when his heart stopped. The toaster was from 1992. He had been meaning to fix it for years. She turned the page. Engineer Priya Kapoor. deployed drone number 2411, killed in a transport accident on the way to Sector 9. The transport's engine failed during final approach. She was 44 years old. She had a son who was 12. Okonkwo paused. The light flickered. He's 19 now. He doesn't know what his mother was building. None of them know. Their families don't know. Their friends don't know. The only people who know are in this room and on this wall. Another page. Specialist James Oduya, drone number 847, died of a stroke, age 58. He had been saving money to take his wife to Zanzibar. They had never left the country before. Another, Lieutenant Maria Santos, drone number 1112, died in a fire. Her apartment building burned down while she was sleeping. She was 31 years old. She had a cat named Biscuit. No one knows what happened to Biscuit. Another, Commander Yuki Tanaka, drone number 3847, died of complications from surgery. She was 67 years old. She had been working on the project since she was 30. Okonkwo's voice softened. 37 years. She saw 3 drones deployed. She named each one. Dandelion Persistence, Last Light. She touched the photograph. Commander Tanaka was smiling in the picture. She was wearing a sweater that her sister had knitted for her. The sweater was purple. Another page. Engineer Fatima Al-Manswari, drone number 4112, died of cancer, age 49. She was diagnosed 6 months before the project ended. She kept working until the week before she died. Her last words were, "Did the drone deploy?" We told her yes. It had deployed 3 days earlier. She smiled. Another, Captain Samuel Okonkwo. She stopped. The fluorescent light flickered, once, twice, 3 times. She touched the photograph. Her husband, gray hair, a smile that made everyone around him relax. The same smile their daughter had inherited. The same hands that had held hers when they buried their first child. The same voice that had read bedtime stories and given wedding toasts and said, "I love you," every morning for 28 years. My husband, deployed drone number 3002, died 8 years ago, cancer. Her voice cracked, just a little, just enough. He asked if we were ready. I said almost. He smiled. She turned the page. Her fingers were shaking now. He said almost was the most human word he had ever heard, because it meant we were never done. We were always getting closer, and that was enough. He said humans built entire civilizations on almost. Almost enough food, almost enough time, almost ready. She looked at his photograph. We were almost ready when he died. Now we're ready. He didn't get to see it. She read names for 47 minutes. Each name, each drone number, each small detail that made a person and not just a photograph on a wall. Each name carried weight. Each name was a life, a family, a story that would never be told outside this room. Technician Olumide Adebio, drone 847, died of a stroke, age 58. He had been saving money to take his wife to Zanzibar. They had never left the country before. He kept a postcard of the beach in his pocket. It was worn soft from his fingers. Specialist Mei Lin, drone 1112, died in a fire. Her apartment building burned down while she was sleeping. She was 31 years old. She had a cat named Biscuit. No one knows what happened to Biscuit. She had been working on the project for 4 years. She deployed 511 drones. Commander Yuki Tanaka, drone 3847, died of complications from surgery. She was 67 years old. She had been working on the project since she was 37 years. She saw 3 drones deployed. She named each one. Dandelion Persistence, Last Light. She never told anyone why she picked those names. Engineer Fatima Al-Manswari, drone 4112, died of cancer, age 49. She was diagnosed 6 months before the project ended. She kept working until the week before she died. Her last words were, "Did the drone deploy?" We told her yes. It had deployed 3 days earlier. She smiled. She was buried with a blueprint of the Shepherd array in her hands. Captain Samuel Okonkwo, drone 3002, died of cancer, age 61. He was my husband. He was the love of my life. He asked if we were ready. I said almost. He smiled. he said almost was enough. When she finished, her voice was hoarse. Her fingers were stained with ink from the pen. The pen hadn't clicked once during the reading. She had promised herself she wouldn't click it. Not in this room. Not while she was reading their names. The pen stayed in her hand, warm, still warm from her grip. She closed the notebook. The cover was soft. The pages were full. There were no blank pages left. Every person had been named. Elder Nymery arrived 3 hours later. The Tev ambassador stepped out of a transport shuttle that had been borrowed from the Krell, the only species with a ship small enough to land in the Johannesburg cargo bay without being noticed. The shuttle's engines whined as they powered down. The cargo bay doors closed behind her with a deep metallic thud. She walked through the bunker on 8 legs. Her silver fur was matted from the journey. She had been traveling for 18 hours straight, through 3 jump points and 1 asteroid field. Her 4 eyes blinked left to right, a nervous rhythm that she couldn't control. The bunker was quiet. Chen was staring at his tablet. Singh was knitting again. The dark green scarf was now long enough to wrap around her neck 3 times. Reyes was holding her chipped mug. The coffee had been cold for hours, but she hadn't put it down. Nymery stopped at the door to the small room. "What is this place?" Okonkwo was still inside, still standing in the center of the floor, still holding her notebook. Her jacket pocket bulged slightly where the thermos sat. The pen was in her hand. She didn't turn around. "This is where we keep the ones who didn't make it." Nymery stepped inside. Her legs clicked against the concrete floor. The sound was sharp in the quiet room. She stood next to Okonkwo and looked at the photographs. 847 faces. Some young, some old, some smiling, some serious, all gone. She had been alive for 1,847 years. She had seen species rise and fall, empires that lasted centuries, wars that killed billions. She had seen the council vote to eradicate 12 species. She had watched from the gallery each time. She had never spoken. She had never voted. She had never been given a vote. But she had watched. Now she stood in a room full of dead humans, and she didn't know what to say. She stood there for 3 hours without speaking. Okonkwo didn't speak either. She just stood and waited. She had gotten very good at waiting. 37 years of waiting had made silence comfortable. At hour 4, Nymery's mandibles opened. "You built weapons of logistics. You won without killing." Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. "No one has ever done that. In 1,847 years, no species has ever defeated the council without firing a shot. Not one." Okonkwo turned to face her. The fluorescent light flickered. 17 seconds, flicker. "We're not hunters," she said. She walked to a small table in the corner of the room. On the table was a cheap electric kettle and a box of tea bags. The same jasmine green that her husband had drunk. The box was almost empty, 3 bags left. She filled the kettle, plugged it in, waited for it to boil. The water took 2 minutes, she counted. "We're farmers. Farmers spend seasons preparing. They watch, they wait, they build walls when no one's looking." The kettle clicked off. Steam rose. The smell of jasmine filled the small room. "And when the storm comes, they've already stored the grain." She poured 2 cups of tea from her dented thermos. The stainless steel was warm against her palms. She handed 1 cup to Nymery. The Tev took it in 2 of her legs. Her fur brushed against Okonkwo's fingers. It was softer than it looked. Nymery sipped. Her mandibles opened and closed. She had never tasted jasmine green tea before. It was floral, warm, a little bitter. "This is what you drink when you wait." Okonkwo nodded. "This is what I drink when I wait, when I grieve, when I remember." She looked at her husband's photograph. "He drank this every morning for 28 years. I used to make fun of him for it, called it his old man tea. Now I drink it every day. It's the only way I can still have breakfast with him." Nymery's 4 eyes blinked. Left to right, slower now. "That's not patience, General, that's something else." Okonkwo smiled. "No warning, no declaration, no mercy. Just a woman standing in a room full of dead people, drinking tea and smiling at a spider the size of a horse." "No," she said. "That's exactly what patience looks like when you've been practicing for 37 years. She clicked her pen one last time. The sound was sharp in the quiet room. Naimary's mandibles twitched. What was that? Okonkwo looked at the pen. The cheap stylus, 11 years old, a gift from her daughter before she left for Mars Colony 7. The plastic was worn smooth from her fingers. The ink was almost gone. She had replaced the cartridge 4 times. This pen belonged to my husband first. He gave it to our daughter when she was 12. She used it for her homework, for her drawings, for her college applications. She turned it over in her fingers. She gave it back to me before she left for Mars. She said I would need it more than her. She was right. Naimary's mandibles opened, and the clicking. He used to click it when he was thinking. She used to click it when she was nervous. I use it when I'm waiting. Okonkwo put the pen in her jacket pocket, next to the thermos, next to the notebook, next to her heart. The clicking is done now. Naimari sipped her tea. Her 4 eyes blinked again, left to right, left to right. Your daughter, does she know what you built, what you did here? Okonkwo shook her head. No one knows. The people in this room knew. The people on that wall knew. That's all. She looked at her husband's photograph, at his smile, at his gray hair, at the hands that had held hers for 28 years. We didn't do this for credit. We didn't do this for fame. We didn't do this so our names would be in history books. She touched the photograph. We did this because someone had to, and we were the ones who were still alive. Naimari set down her cup. Her legs folded beneath her, a sitting position that she had learned from watching humans. It was uncomfortable for her. Her joints weren't designed to bend that way. She did it anyway. 847 photographs, she said. 847 names. 847 people who died for a war that never happened. Her mandibles trembled. In my culture, we have a saying. The dead do not care who wins. They care only that they are remembered. Okonkwo nodded. We have a saying too. A person dies twice. Once when their heart stops. Once when their name is spoken for the last time. She looked at the wall. I plan to keep saying their names for a long time. Naimari was quiet for a long moment. Then, you said you built the Shepherd Array so the council would see that killing was pointless. Okonkwo nodded. That's what the drones did. They didn't destroy ships. They didn't destroy colonies. They destroyed the ability to wage war at all. She poured more tea into Naimari's cup. The steam rose between them. The council has 12,847 ships. Each ship needs fuel. Each ship needs supplies. Each ship needs to communicate with command. Without those things, they're just metal boxes floating in the dark. She looked at the flickering light. We didn't build weapons. We built a calendar, a countdown, a reminder that patience is violence that has simply learned to wait. Naimari's 4 eyes blinked, left to right, left to right. The council will not forget this, she said. They will try again in 10 years, in 100. They will rebuild their supply lines. They will find new fuel depots. They will come back. Okonkwo shrugged. Then we'll have to build more drones. She looked at the wall. We've gotten pretty good at it. Naimari stood up. Her legs unfolded slowly. She was old, older than most of the species in the council, older than some of the stars that humans had named. I will tell my people what I saw here, she said. The Tev will remember, the Krell will remember, the S-Sith, the Hrathi, the Ili, the Marin, the Tikari, the Vel, the Orani, the Sendari, the Pru, the Zyle. She bowed her head. All 847 of them. Okonkwo smiled. Send the shepherd, she said. That's what we call the drones, but it's also what we called ourselves. The ones who guide, the ones who protect, the ones who bring the flock home. She looked at her husband's photograph. He would have liked that. Outside, Earth's sun rose over Johannesburg. The city was quiet. Most people didn't know what had happened in the last 72 hours. They didn't know that 12,847 council ships had jumped toward Earth. They didn't know that 4,712 drones had detonated across council space. They didn't know that a war had been fought, and won without a single shot being fired. They just woke up, made coffee, went to work. The morning traffic was bad on the M1. A child was crying in a daycare in Soweto. A dog was barking in a yard in Sandton. The world was ordinary. The world was normal. Okonkwo stood in the doorway of the bunker. The morning air was cold. The sky was blue. A bird was singing somewhere in the distance. A Haida, loud and raucous and utterly unconcerned with galactic politics. She took out her pen. Warm, still warm. She didn't click it. She just held it and watched the sun rise. The light caught the dented thermos in her pocket. The steam had stopped rising. The tea was cooling. Nimari stood behind her. The Tev had never seen Earth's sun before. It was smaller than her home star. Hotter, too. The light felt sharp against her eyes. She blinked. Left to right, left to right. Will you tell them, she asked, the rest of the galaxy what you did here? Okonkwo didn't answer for a long time. The bird kept singing. The sun kept rising. The traffic kept moving. Finally, no. Why not? Because the story isn't about what we did. It's about why we did it. She turned to face Nimari. The light caught her face. She looked tired, old, grieving, but also peaceful. We didn't build the Shepherd Array because we wanted to win. We built it because we wanted to stop losing. There's a difference. She put the pen back in her pocket. The Council declared war on patience. We showed them what patience looks like when it's been practicing for 37 years. She walked back into the bunker. Now let's go have some breakfast. The memorial room stayed dark. The fluorescent light kept flickering, once every 17 seconds. A bad ballast that no one had ever bothered to fix. No one would ever bother to fix it. Some things were allowed to be imperfect. The photographs stayed on the wall. 847 faces, 847 names, 847 lives that had ended before the war did. Technician Marcus Webb, drone 1847, died of cardiac arrest, age 61. Engineer Priya Kapoor, drone 2411, killed in transport accident, age 44. Specialist James Oduya, drone 847, died of stroke, age 58. Lieutenant Maria Santos, drone 1112, died in fire, age 31. Commander Yuki Tanaka, drone 3847, died of surgical complications, age 67. Engineer Fatima Al-Mansouri, drone 4112, died of cancer, age 49. Captain Samuel Okonkwo, drone 3002, died of cancer, age 61. They didn't know that the war was over. They didn't know that the Council's ships were stranded. They didn't know that humanity had won without firing a shot. They just knew that they had done their part, that they had built something that mattered, that they had been part of something bigger than themselves. And maybe that was enough. Okonkwo poured one more cup of tea, jasmine green, the same kind her husband had drunk every morning for 28 years. She set the cup on the table in front of his photograph. The steam rose. The light flickered. The clicking was done. The tea was warm. The dead were named. The war was over before it started. Somewhere in the darkness, 4,712 drone husks drifted silently, proof that humanity's greatest weapon had never been a bomb. It was a calendar,